But today we're going to talk about the whole concept of reporting. What should go in a DOE report, and also, how to do it. How mechanically do we actually grab a hold of information, tables, graphs, what have you, that are actually in the software in order to bring it into a report. The reason we're doing this is we have had, through the course of time, numerous questions come in to our help desk about how to do this sort of thing. And in a way, it's kind of beyond the scope of really what you think about when you're doing DOE analysis. There's nothing statistical about it, if you will. It's after the statistics are done that we're going to pull together the content for a report. So really, we were kind of left without the best of answers to tell people. Every once in a while, we do discuss, well, how could we improve the reporting capabilities of the software itself? And that usually ends up kind of a circular discussion, because each individual needs certain different things from the software, and it operates in a different environment. So what I'm going to do today is kind of cover some of the basics, because at the end of the day, a lot of us at Staddies, well, we use the software and we create content every day. We know how to do this, and we simply do it. But the people asking the questions at the help desk, well, they might not be as fluent. So what I want to do in this brief 1 hour is to show what one might include in a DOE report, and how to get it done. Okay, so that's really kind of where I'm headed here today. So I'm going to turn the camera off so you can see a little more clearly the screen. Okay, and let's get into it. So first of all, we want to prevent audio disruptions, so I have you on mute. There is a question feature in GoToWebinar. So if you do have a question, please feel free to type it in the question box, not the comment box, because the one I have open is the question box. So I'll be looking at that from time to time. And hopefully I can get to whatever questions you have there. We will be posting this video, this webinar, both on our website, and I believe it'll also be out on YouTube. And the reason I mentioned that is we're going to go through some stuff, and we're actually going to open up the software and open up a Word document. We're actually going to do some stuff to demonstrate how to get these things done, and it's going to go by pretty quick. So the webinar will be out there for further review if you want to kind of go through it a bit more slowly at your convenience. Also, the slides that I'm presenting will be on our website as well, so you can grab a hold of those and have a look as we go through this. Okay. So what are we talking about? So first off, what really should go in a DOE report, and what, the opposite, what can we maybe leave out? And that can be interesting sometimes. So we'll talk about that. Then we're going to learn several methods to extract and edit Design Expert, or if you have Staddies 360, the flagship product. We're going to learn how to grab a hold of that information, get it into some standard reporting tools. And when I say standard reporting tools, I'm going to be guiding you to use, in this webinar, standard Microsoft tools. I'll assume that you have those and are adequately fluent with them in order to accomplish the types of things that we're talking about. So a little bit of a background there. I'm going to assume that your final report will either be a Word document or potentially a PowerPoint presentation as well. Not going to really address specific report outlines, because that can differ between organizations, whether in academia or in industry. Each company or institution may have different guidelines. Okay, so I'll give you some suggestions, but they're just that, right? This is kind of tips from some of us who have done a little bit of this. That's all. So okay, so we're going to talk about hints and what to include. Then we're going to talk about how to transfer a couple of different types of content: table material, also graphical content. Okay, we're going to show multiple techniques to get these things done. Some are simple, some are not simple at all, depending on how much flexibility you need to edit. Okay, the simpler the approach, the less editable. So we'll see how that works. So what goes into a DOE report? So this has been kind of fun. Mark Anderson and myself from Studies have kind of talked through, well, what do we want to tell people? And Mark is a very pragmatic individual, very practical. We're both engineers, and our bias really, as we had this conversation, our bias is toward engineering reports. And what we're talking about here is driving home the key messages. What did we learn? Okay, what do we want to recommend? What are our findings? And for that purpose, it's often best to avoid content that dilutes or distracts from the key points and discoveries being made. Okay, now you may find yourself in a different environment, and that's okay. You may find that if you're doing an academic or research report, that you may have a little additional requirement to demonstrate that you understand design of experiments or ANOVA analyses or what have you. Okay, and you may choose to have different content in the body of your report. But I think you're going to be a little bit surprised that our recommendation is to keep the statistical stuff a little bit sparse in the body of the report, and focus on your key messages, right? Why did you do the study and what did you learn? And let's have some impact with our findings. However, your organization, again, may have some additional requirements. And of course, we're not going to tell you what to write. You have to decide what your message is and how to best communicate with your audience. But we're going to give you a few tips. So number one is, you probably want to include the raw data. And the main reason for that is somebody may want to follow this up. I mean, when we look for case studies in our software, we might be going to books written by Cornell or Montgomery, different people, and look at studies that were done years ago, and the data is provided to us with those things. So we're able to reconstruct these analyses and go ahead and create case studies. Well, someone may need to follow your work to be able to grab a hold of your data and analyze it again, validate your findings, if you will, or maybe choose to analyze it a little bit different way. But to have your raw data available is kind of a given in most cases. Jumping to the bottom point, though, if your data table is huge, you may need to provide a more durable way to preserve it for future reference. I mean, if you got 1,000 lines of data or something like that, well, that's just going to be, unhelpful to put that in the appendix of a report. It's just too big. But anyway, we suggest including the raw data if you can, and by putting it, as an appendix. For standard designs, and by standard designs, we're talking about factorial designs or fractional factorial designs, Blackett-Berman, central composite designs, box-Banken designs, 3-level factorials, simplex lattice mixture designs, etc. You might want to look at these raw data tables in what's called standard order, with a column showing the actual run sequence, right? You want to see the actual run sequence so you can see if maybe you're being influenced by some lurking factors, right? You've got a trend to your data or something like that. So that would be a hint. And I'm going to go through an example and kind of show you this in action a little bit. For optimal designs, and a reminder, an optimal design is when a standard design doesn't quite work for you because you've constrained your design space or other factors, other reasons. So in an optimal design, the computer is going to shop around for the ideal set of data points to collect in order to give you a successful design of experiment. Well, it's hard to understand really the best way to present that data table. But I'm going to suggest that if you follow this little trick, it'll give you something that visually, at least, will help you make sense of the data table. And I'm going to show you this in action. So, let me just briefly say here that what we want to do is we're going to add a column called build type, and then we're going to sequentially sort in descending factors. So we'll sort on the highest letter. So factor C, then B, then A. and then by build type. And then we're going to include the run sequence column, but omit the standard order, because standard order for optimal designs doesn't really have a lot of meaning. But I'm going to show you that in action. So that probably got a little deep quick. Yeah. And again, if the data table is too big, find a way to keep it, in storage so somebody can take a peek at it. Okay. So what really goes in the body of the report? What should we be thinking about? And this might surprise you a little bit, but it makes sense if you think about it. The ideal thing is to report the model in reduced form. By reduced form, we're going to extract or eliminate the factors that don't have significance. So we're going to use the predictive model, probably in coded form, which is going to show the coefficients and the factors that are relevant. And so we'll show that, mentioning that all the terms are significant and or necessary to support hierarchy. And the overall model p-value is good to report as well. So that is kind of the techie minimum that you probably want to include there. It kind of shows the so what of your work, right? We went out, we did this experiment for a reason, we digested the data set, and here is the biggest, so what did I learn? It's kind of all packaged right there with the model in reduced form. This will surprise people, but we probably don't want to put the ANOVA table and most of the fit statistics in the body of the report. If you include it, I suggest we put it in the appendix. And why is that? Well, as much as some of us love and adore the ANOVA table and the fit statistics, it's kind of steady technical, isn't it? And really, if you're in an engineering report, that's just an intermediary step to the conclusions, and the conclusions are really represented by the model in its reduced form. So everything else is just how we got there. Okay. That said, I do like to have at least a glimpse of a couple of these fit statistics. I do want to see the predicted R-squared and the adjusted R-squared. And why is that? Well, the adjusted R-squared gives us a pretty good idea of how well did the predictive model match our data set. Okay. And the predicted R-squared gives us our best ability to read how good this model will be at predicting future cases, right? So we ran, 16 data points. We created a model. Well, now we go out and we test the 17th data point, a new data point. The R-squared is meant to give us a pretty good idea of how well we're going to predict the missing data point, if you look at how it's created. So those are two of the fit statistics that I do think we should take a peek at. If you transform the data, tell me why. Okay, if you used a log transform, was that just for fun, or was there a natural phenomenon that led you to want to do that? I'm working with sound levels, and so it's all based on decibels. So taking a log made sense. Whatever, or did the box Cox tell you to do it? So explain why you did a transform if you did one. We're not going to want to take a peek at all the diagnostic plots. You're free to put them in the appendix if they're relevant. But if you do identify any outliers, you might want to highlight them and tell me whether or not they were ignored or not. Okay, if you took them out of the analysis, it would be good to know, and also how much investigation you did to determine whether or not that outlier was indeed an outlier. So that would be something that's worthwhile. Again, though, what graphs should you include? Well, again, it all boils down to, what's your story, right? So use the pictures that tell your story. Generally, though, for factorial designs, the main effect plot will often do the job. However, if you do have two-factor interactions, which are quite common, you're going to want to use a two-factor interaction plot to discuss the story. So that, for factorial designs, frequently we're using two-factor interaction plots. If you have multi-level categoric, you might take a look at the skyscraper plot. Okay, this one here in the middle that just kind of highlights all the different bars for all the categoric choices within a multi-level categoric design. Okay, that's a one-picture summary of the whole story right there. Right, every run is kind of reflected in that. For process and mixture optimization, you might want to take a look at a 3D plot. This one is for a 3-component mixture design, but you get the same thing with the responsive surface, right? You have a clear picture of the optimal conditions. Okay. If you have multi-response optimizations, right? So we use the optimization module, the numeric optimization module. You may find some solutions, or you will hopefully find some solutions. It's good to report our ramps view. I'm assuming you're familiar enough with the software that you might know what I'm talking about there. But the ramps view is going to give you an idea of what your solution looks like and how well you satisfy your optimization criteria. You might move into graphical analysis and use the overlay plot to kind of show you that window of opportunity, or that window of success. If you remember from our training, the yellow blob, if you will. It's where you can be successful throughout your design space. And if you can turn on the confidence intervals, that's even better, unless they completely wipe out the sweet spot of operation, right? The yellow blob disappears. But confidence interval gives you a little bit more certainty of the region of success, because it takes into consideration the standard deviation and the fact that there is a little bit of imprecision in the estimates that we're making. So that accounts for that to a degree. Okay, so those are some good plots to include. If you have, so the ramps view is going to show you the number one solution that you've identified, but oftentimes the table view, there's a report view that will show, in descending order of desirability, it will show multiple solutions. And sometimes you might have a reason to seek out a solution that's not necessarily the number one solution. I'm looking at, I have 3 different types of fiber that I'm using in a design, but one of them is asbestos, and that happens to be the number one solution. But I don't really want to use asbestos, but the second best solution was fiberglass, and maybe the performance was reasonably good. Well, you might want to know that there's an alternate solution that isn't the best of the best, but might, for other reasons, be a good choice. And the report view will kind of highlight, your candidate list of solutions. That might want to go in the appendix, the report view. All right, so now, that's just some thoughts on what might be included. But you, of course, are the final arbiter of how you're going to create your report to communicate your message. Okay, so that's the end of my my scripting for you on what to include. Now I want to talk about how you're going to get it done. Okay, so there's multiple techniques that those of us that do this frequently, this is how we do it. All right. So we're going to look at table content, and we're going to look at graphical content. So we'll start with table. So I'm going to start with the easiest techniques and work my way up to some of the harder things. So the easiest technique of all is to use the Microsoft snipping tool. Okay, what is that? Well, that's this thing. So that's called the snipping tool, and this just allows you to grab something that's on your screen and clip it and put it someplace. That's all it does. And as long as what you have in front of you is suitable, then you can use the snipping tool to get the job done. So let's take a look. So this is the one of our case studies. Yep, there it is on the screen. So this is one of our case studies for I think filtration, if you've been through our class. So this is just a data table for filtration. So we can use the snipping tool. I'm going to create a new one. Then I'm just going to color out what I want to snip, something like that. And I'm going to take this Word document that I've started. I'm going to put it in there. That's it. Now with this, it's scalable, so you can size it. And all the text fonts and everything scales appropriately, and that might be good enough for your needs. If you want, you can do a few more tricks, like maybe I want to center it in my view. Maybe I want to put a label on it. right? So you can do that sort of thing, okay? It's not rocket science. It's very simple. Not a lot of opportunity to edit, but if that communicates your story and it's suitable for your format in your report, there it is. You're done right there, okay? Now, if you want to make this a little prettier, we have to get things a little bit more complicated. So if we go back to the data table, another thing we can do is we can highlight the table, and then in the table itself, I could right click and say copy with headings. So copy with headings. Then I can go into Excel specifically, and in Excel I like to use with all the grids gone. So to do that, you go into View Grid Lines and make sure that's unchecked, right? Because it's going to mess up my view. Then I'm going to paste this, and I want to paste that with the match destination formatting. Typically works the best. You can get it done either way, but this typically works the best. And from here is just clean it up to look like what you want. And I'm just going to, quickly do a few things here to kind of make it look like what I think it might ought to look like, maybe. So let's see, play with my column widths a little bit, something like that. Whatever meets your, why didn't that do quite what I want? I want that to be like that. All right. Right, justify that, right, justify this. Thought I right justified all of these, but I must have not done what I intended. Okay, so let's pretend that's good enough, and then I will, just make the titles bold because bold is cool. So we'll do something like that, maybe readjust some of these column widths again, and I don't know, I always like to pretty up my my titles, maybe put a something like that, right? So then you can, there's a couple of ways to do that. You could use the snipping tool again and go ahead and grab a hold of that. I believe, let me just try this quickly. If I were to Control-C, copy him, come into my Word document, I believe I can use that as a picture would be a good way to do it because now it's scalable. Paste it as a picture, and now I can change it around. Maybe do the same thing, center it, and I could put a label underneath it, what have you. So it's the same data. I went through a little extra step to pretty it up a little bit in Excel before bringing it into Word, but maybe that's good enough, and that certainly was easy, just snip and paste, right? So that's an easy way to get that done. Okay, so back to the presentation. So we just did that. I'm going to do one that's a little bit more extravagant. We're going to use the optimal fish training exercise because there's some other features that I want to kind of point out. So we're going to do the same thing with this one, but but with a few enhanced tricks. So let's go back to the case study. And this one is, do I not have it open? Oh, come on. Maybe I don't. Let's see what happened to it. Okay, so here's the fish case study. Now, so what this is a study where I have 3 different kinds of fish. This was the famous study done by Cornell in the 1970s as they came up with the Burger King Whopper. But in any event, there are 3 fish that were used in the formulation. And then we have 3 process conditions: the oven temperature, the oven time, and the deep fry time. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here. So the first thing that I'm noticing is that these specified compositions, this is fish, right? We did not measure out 49.3524. That was much too precise. We measured 49 at best. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to round this composition off. So I'm going to use the rounding tools And I'm going to say we really ran this to the nearest percentage point. Okay, and that's going to take all the formulation and it's going to round them. Okay, so that's what we did. The oven temp, we did not set it at 388.75. We'd be lucky if that hit the nearest degree. So we're going to do the same thing there. We're going to round that factor to no decimal places. We'll do that. Same thing for the bake time. At best, that was to the nearest minute. And then the deep fry time, there's no way we got 36.175 seconds. Again, at best, they hit the nearest second. Okay, so that makes the table a whole lot more logical, right? I mean, that's what we did. I'm going to assume that whatever the response is, that they in fact did measure to that degree of precision, but only they know for sure. Now, here's what I'm going to do on this one. First, I am going to go up in this upper left-hand corner. I'm going to right-click on that, and I'm going to click Build Point Type. Okay, so now I have whether it was a model point, a lack of fit, or even a replicate. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to double-click on my number 6 factor and then move my way to the left, stopping with the number 1 factor. So here's what I'm going to do. Double-click to sort. Come to factor 5, do the same thing. Number 4, do the same thing. 3, 2, 1. Now what have I got? I have all my mullets now with 0. Okay, the first fish. I'm seeing that the build type that I have model points, like a fit points, a replicate. So now I have this run repeated twice, right? 0, 49, 51, 375, 25, 36. And here are the 2 results I got for that run and its replicate. Okay, so and then I move to the roughly 50% on the mullets and then 100%. So it kind of groups it into some logical chunks that way, or at least the best you can do. And I'm showing the run number. Again, the standard order has no practical meaning, but I'm at least seeing the order that it was actually run. Okay, and I'm grouping the data in a way that, to me at least, makes some sense. Okay. All right, well, from there, if I wanted to pull that into a report, and I won't repeat all the steps, but the key here is highlight the table, right-click, copy with headings, come to Excel, go someplace in Excel, right-click, destination, and now I can do the same trick that I did over on the left-hand side, get everything, format as you want it to be, and then bring it to your Word document. Okay. Now, graphical content can be the more complicated one. Okay, so there are a few different techniques and methods that we're going to want to talk about here. Starting again with the easiest, and I bet you can guess what that's going to be. That's going to be our snipping tool. That oftentimes gets the job done, right? Let's not make it hard. Let's not let perfection be the enemy of good. If the snipping tool is good enough, go there. Oh, one comment I did want to make about the snipping tool is that every once in a while I run across a user who, when they do the snipping tool, it makes fuzzy images. And I really haven't gotten to the bottom of why that happens on occasion to some people. But I did do some internet searches, and it seems to be a phenomenon that in fact does occur from time to time. And if you're one of the unlucky few, I suggest you do an internet search on snipping tool and fuzzy images, and they have some tips for how to get that to improve. So I don't want to delve too deeply into that, but if you can't get sharp images using a snipping tool, do a little searching, and hopefully you can find the right settings to make it work properly. So, all right, so let's take a look at this one. So here's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to go back to that filtration case study, and we are just going to use the snipping tool to grab an image. Okay, doesn't get a lot easier. The issue is that what you see is what you get. There's really no editing capabilities, but I'm looking at that, and it might be a perfectly usable graph. Well, let's just look at how to get that done. So here's the study. Let's go to Analyze. and look at the model graphs, and there's the picture. Okay, well that's what we want. So I'm going to grab my snipping tool again. I will hit new, and I'll just snip what I want. It looks about like that. Come back to my Word document, and let's just put that in there. Okay, so there it is. Well, it's probably a little bigger than I wanted it. That's okay. It's scalable. I can go ahead and, put that the size that I wanted. I could center it again if I wanted to, put a heading underneath it, what have you. But that's that's the snipping tool. Very simple, very effective, if indeed that's what you want to present. There's another way to get it done. So this one, if you go to the graph itself, you can right-click on it and you can export to Word. Okay, so we're going to do that, but a couple of things I want to do before I get there. Number one, if I were to do this, it's going to grab a hold of this information that's up here on the left, this little legend. So we typically find that we don't want that. And so what we can do is come up here to View and turn off Show Legend. Okay, so now that's gone. Okay. Now the other thing I want to show you is some features within the software that you can change some things to your liking. Right. If I look at my graph right now, I can read all the numbers, the scale, right, the temperature, etc. But one of the reasons I can do that, I can read it, is because I've gone away from the software defaults. I present and I want people to be able to see my screen. So if I right click and I go to Graph Preferences, and I hit this little double T here, the text button. So for example, I can come down here to the graph axis, and I could make that, I think the default might have been 11. I could be wrong, but let's just say that that's what it was. And then when I hit OK, you can see that all those numbers became, painfully small. Well, I don't want that. So what I'll do then is I'll come back and I'll change that. Change the text back to my personal default for the axis, which is 20. I find that's just does a little better job. Okay, so there are things in the software you can do, and you can change the temperature and the you can change the axis labels and etc. You can change the font for those things directly in the software, and therefore when you export it, it's going to have all those font size changes made before you do it. All right, so now I'm going to right click here. I will export this to Word. I have two choices now, bitmap or metafile. Well, guess what? We're going to explore both. The bitmap is going to be the first one, and the beauty of a bitmap is everything will be scalable. You won't be able to edit it much, but it'll be like the ones that we did before. I can change the size of the image, and all the fonts will scale, and it'll work out fine. So I'll hit OK. Come to my Word document, and now we've created one that kind of looks a lot like the last one because it is. All right, but here the beauty of that now is, like the previous one, is I can scale it. Okay, and it'll be readable, and I can do whatever I need to with it. Okay, I can with this one as well with my snipping tool. So whichever way works for you. And oh, by the way, you can change the font size before you use the snipping tool as well, right? So all those edit preferences things you can do regardless of the technique. Okay, next. So let me go back to my slides, make sure I'm not. Okay, so we turn the legend off, right click, export as bitmap. Okay, you can't edit the text, but as long as you edit the text the way you want it before you export it, using the features within the software itself, you'll make a reasonably, attractive image. Okay. What if you really wanted to get a little bit more sophisticated? You didn't want to have the A here on the temperature. You don't like the label interaction. I don't want that there. And maybe I want to have, instead of have concentration over here, because now I don't really know anything about concentration other than, well, this was the high level and this was the low level. But since I got rid of the legend, I don't even know what the high and low levels were. Maybe I want to, put a label on each of these two lines just to tell me what the two cut. So if you want to do more editing, you got to get a little bit more sophisticated. Okay, so now that's where we're going to go next. Okay, so let's go back in the software. We're going to do the same thing as we did before. We're going to export. Excuse me. I want to do it this way. That probably will work, but here's the better way. I am going to file. Nope. Edit copy. There we go. I'm catching up to myself. Edit copy is the cleaner way to get this done. So now it's going to copy this thing. I'm going to export as an enhanced meta file. I'm pretty sure I put it on the right-click export thing a little bit. But one of the reasons I'm doing this is I want to make sure this time that I am going to put this in, of all things, a blank PowerPoint presentation. This technique works best when you do your edits in PowerPoint. Okay. I've also done it through Excel, but if you put it directly in Word, it gets real messy and you don't get the desired result. So here, let's just go ahead and paste it. So now we've put it in there. I'm going to right-click it now, and I am going to go to Group, Ungroup, and it's going to give me a little funny message, and I'm just going to say yes to it. And now what I have is the ability to do some things. And I'm going to take a few minutes to kind of walk through this one and actually do some of the things that I might actually do. I'm going to get rid of this label on the top because that's not doing me anything. So now I can edit and get rid of that. This one, I am going to get rid of the C label. I'm going to put that was 4% because that's what the concentration was for that top line. I'm going to get rid of the percent label, and then I'm going to drag that down here. Okay. Then I'm going to make a new one by copying that. And I'm going to paste it, and I'll grab that one down here. And this line is going to be 2%. Okay. Temperature, I don't want the label A. That's just not helping me any, so I'm going to get rid of that. And maybe I will, for fun, oops, if I can highlight everything, I will maybe make the font up to, I don't know, that's 20 or something. Okay, so we'll do that. Maybe move a little closer so I can see it. We're going to do the same thing on this one. The filtration. See if I can grab everything here. And I'll move that one up to 20. So you can read it. Okay. What else? This little C plus and C minus, that has no meaning to me anymore. So I'm going to cut that out of the picture. Take this one out of the picture. So, this is just detail work, and I'm slowly making an image now that meets my requirements. I'm looking at the font sizes for my scale. It's too small, so I'm going to shift-click, select them all along the bottom, and let's pick a bigger size. Let's go up to, I don't know, let's just say 14 or something. Okay, does that work for me? That's good enough. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. This can be a little clumsy getting them all. All right, so now that those are selected, I'll kick those up to 14. Then I want to, they move around, so I got to put them where they make sense. Okay, so there. So that's now what I've done. So that might make more sense to me. So now what I can do, I'll do my technique of using the snipping tool here, and I'll just go ahead and grab a hold of him. That's my new graph. And now I will grab my Word document, and let's go to a fresh spot. And I'll put that in, and there's my new graphic. Okay. So the point being, with the enhanced meta file, you have the ability to do a little bit better editing if you need to or want to. Yeah, so that's a little bit more complicated, but it's best to wash that through PowerPoint instead of going directly into Word. You'll struggle if you go into Word. You can get it done in Excel, though, I will say that. All right. Okay, so that's that one. Now here's a little challenge, though. For 3D graphics or contour plots, the number of individual text boxes tends to be plentiful, very large, and that frequently causes this technique to kind of overwhelm itself, and it doesn't work really well. So if you're going to do 3D plots or contour plots, something that are more graphically intense, it's best to use one of the previous techniques. And if that won't work for you, there is one last approach to consider, and this is just going to get an honorable mention. I'm not going to show you this one, in part because it involves using Microsoft tools that might not be considered standard. So you go through Photos in something called their designer tool. And here's a little script for how to get it done. Okay. But at the end of the day, using these techniques, even with these complicated graphics, you can have editable images that you can deal with the more sophisticated situations. And here's one that was done using that technique, and I was able to edit the text sizes, etc., and it worked just fine. Okay. So that one, you might want to, if you're going to ever use that one, you might want to go back to my slide, grab it off the website when it's available. But there's the script for how to do that. So wrapping up, knowing what to report is number one, the most critical thing. What is your message? The impact of your work depends on the story you tell. Okay, it doesn't do anybody any good until we all understand the impact of what you've discovered. We like to keep it simple, right? Stat Ease is called Stat Ease for a reason, right? We don't want life to be simplistic, but we do want our messages to be concise and simple and direct. And our software kind of emphasizes our approach. It's complicated software. There's a lot going on, but we try to make the user interface very, very simple for people to use. But it gives you the right answer, and we think that reporting should resemble that. We want you to get your message out there without encumbering it with all kinds of complicated stories. Focus on impact. If you have detailed stuff, there's no harm in putting it in the appendix, but you don't want to distract your message in the body of the report if you can help it. Now, if you're doing an academic thing showcasing what a DOE is, you're of course going to do that. But that's, you got to decide what's important. Which is the last point. You're the author, right? So you can listen to what I'm saying, and you can disregard it all if you want to. You got to decide what's relevant within the context of your organization or institution. So DOE reporting requires extracting and editing content from Design Expert Stat Ease 360. So, I've used other software, statistical software packages, and everyone struggles with this a little bit. One competitor has, what they call a reporting feature, but it's just kind of a big bag that you can put, clips in that may or may not be editable or useful. So really, I think some of the techniques we talked about today are probably going to be the most powerful ways to actually get it done. Tables are best edited in Excel. Graphics, as we said, you can use the snipping tool. You can directly export the graph. Bitmaps would be scalable. Enhanced meta files are more editable if you wash them through PowerPoint. The most complicated method of all is to edit photos in through Photos and Designer. It's a very editable thing, and that can be helpful if you have very complex graphical images that just will fail if you try to use the other approach. I did want to show one other thing that I sort of forgot to mention while I'm in the neighborhood. You can also change the scale. You know, so for example, this y-axis, maybe I want to play with that a little bit. So maybe I want to make the high here, 100, and the ticks, I'll reduce that to 7. So now it kind of focuses the image into what you want to see, right? So when I talked about editing directly in the software, I wanted to mention that little trick as well. So that exists. Okay. One last parting gift. We can now do some things a little bit more interesting with the 3D plots. The color gradients can now be more carefully managed in the 2025 release. So let's go to the fish case again and just show you what I'm talking about. So here's the fish case. Okay, so here, let's take a look at a 3D plot. And let's take the oven time and temp up because that makes the graph a little bit more interesting. So remember, we have this gradient here that kind of shows, we can set the values here, edit gradient range, but here if it's near 4, it's red, and it's green, right? So you got the hot spot kind of indicated there, the peak. But over here on this gradient, if you click on that, you can change what it looks like. So for example, maybe you want to make a black and white report. Well, you can do this. Now I'm not seeing a lot of contrast from bottom to top here, but if I come over to the gradient range, maybe if I make that, let's see, the low, let's say I make that 1.5 and I make the high 3. That's going to force a little bit more contrast in there. So you can see, it improves the nature of the thing. But you have other options, right? You can get really colorful. You can get, kind of bold with these things. You can, if you're in a pastel mood, you can go that direction. So you have different ways of creating these things, depending on what's going to be most helpful to your report. I was in my prior career, I was working with an individual that struggled to see these things, and then it became, one day he said, I suffer from color blindness, and I really can't see the gradients that well. So we came up with some ways around that, but that happens, right? So if you have that situation, you may want to, maybe the grayscale is a more helpful way for somebody with color blindness to see what's going on. Anyway, so that's a new feature that exists in version 25. So we didn't talk a lot about DOE and statistical analysis in this webinar. But if you do have an interest in that topic and want to advance your skills, just a reminder that we do offer training. You can see the schedule of available training on our website under Learn DOE. So we have process optimization, and we also have mixture or formulation design. So we have 2 different courses that we typically offer. There are others, but these are the more frequently offered 2. And if your company or institution has 6 or more people, you may find it more cost effective and helpful to have us come out and conduct an in-person training if that's of interest. But I'll let you pursue that if you wish. And with that, that is our contribution to the topic of report writing. What might belong in a report, in some techniques at least for how to extract content from Statis Design Expert or 360 to get the job done. So with that, I do thank you for your attention. Wish you the best of experiments and the eventual report that follows. So thank you very much.